If you're strong, then train for speed. If you're quick, then train for strength. And if you're neither, just train. For me, was always just pushing the boundaries of physical excellence, just challenging stuff that we always take for granted. Too many people will go to the gym and they're just not clear about the cellular signal they're trying to send to their body. You can't go into the gym on smelling salts with your friend, smacking your back every single length. Your central nervous system will be fried. So much has been done on anorexia, bulimia, but muscle dysmorphia is not far behind, if not bigger. Ido Portal looks fantastic, but he's functional. James Haskell, mountain of a man, functional. Elliot Hulse, equally. So all these guys, yeah, they look good, but it's a complete byproduct of this functional aesthetic. There's no need to do this and move centimeters at a time. No need. Far better off getting a good cookbook. People are always looking for that magic pill. They're always looking for it. It doesn't exist. The best personal trainer in the world will never be as good as what you can tell yourself. You are your best personal trainer.
Have you ever run a marathon towing a car behind you? Well, that is what Ross Edgley did. It took him over 19 hours, but here in the UK at Silverstone Racetrack, he towed that car. Now, why? Well, it's a great question. Ross is constantly challenging the notions of strength and stamina and whether they can coexist. And he is going to push the limits and continue looking in to these two dynamics with his next feat, which is to climb a rope that is the height of Mount Everest. I believe it's 8 kilometers high, and he is going to climb this over a 24-hour period. And I'm very excited to see Ross push the edges of these boundaries. You know, it's very easy to see Ross and to see what he does and to see his body and body type and think, okay, it's just another fitness model. He's just another trainer. But Ross is highly intelligent, understands biology, nutrition, training very well, and he likes to push himself. And it's not easy to compete these feats. And I asked him on the show, there must be something deeply wrong with you, Ross, to get through the pain barriers that you must have to do. And climbing a rope for 24 hours, I can't imagine climbing a rope for 2 hours. And I think there's a lot we can learn from Ross, and I'm fascinated to see how he can push these two notions of strength and stamina, which traditionally, as athletes, we think have to exist independently. And so I'm looking forward to where that narrative goes, and I would like to be more involved with what Ross is doing and seeing how we can really push the envelope when it comes to the notions we have about our bodies. A lot of people ask me, Brian, what is London Real really about? Well, it's more than just video content that we put out there with fascinating messages and interviews with incredible guests that come around the world to our studios here in London. It's about more. It's about the 1,000 members of our Academy worldwide that get together and push each other to be the best version of themselves. And we do that through meetings in global cities, through our summit meeting here in London, meetings at the studios, because I believe that we as humans owe it to the rest of us not to play small. I believe we're here on this earth to go big, to risk it, to take chances, and to produce great results, great art, great companies. And that's what we try to do here at London Real, and here's a little bit more about that.
The entrepreneurial journey, it can be a lonely road. I push myself in so many areas, but you know, you can't do it all yourself.
The thing about the Academy is it's like, look, you have the ideas, you have the ability, you have the skill, and you have the sort of ambition for yourself. But when you have a group of people pulling you forward, it's so important.
Accountability is what's missing from most of the programs or any gurus or any internet mentor that I had before.
I wanted to get some accountability. I wanted to make myself accountable to a group, to you.
The reason we started the Academy is because I felt like we were doing these amazing talks, like we'd have a Peter Sage episode or a Dan Pena episode or a Kala or someone, and you get super inspired, and then YouTube stops, and then you go back to your life and you don't make any changes. And it was just like, it felt like, what are we doing? If you're designing your life right, the good times are now. And in a few years, you'll look back and say, wow, that was amazing.
The thing about the Academy is it has so many different sort of layers to it. I think your web seminars are awesome. The way you broke it down and the style of your teaching is pretty awesome.
I like the feed. When I have to motivate myself, I kind of look at others struggling and getting over those struggles. So I actually follow daily the feed.
Best feature would be the sort of Facebook aspect of it, the social media aspect of it, as in creating a profile with your goals, your dreams.
Everyone's on the same vibe, and we may be at different stages in our journeys, but everyone's on the same page at the end of the day. Everyone's really trying to push themselves and building the best you. It really resonates with me.
And the fact that I'm committing a small amount of money and the fact that I'm actually trying to interact with those people means that I'm invested and means that I will keep it for the long run.
You have to be serious about yourself and what you want to achieve. And if you're serious about yourself, this is going to be such a fantastic platform.
London Real, sponsored by Bulletproof. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Ross Edgley, who is a strength and conditioning coach, performance nutritionist, and co-founder of The Protein Works. You write for the publications GQ, Men's Health, and The Telegraph, and your clients include Andy Bolton, the 7-time powerlifting Congress world champion. You recently completed a marathon, but you did so by pulling a 1.4-ton car behind you at Silverstone Racetrack. It took you over 19 hours. Ross, that's crazy. Welcome to London Real.
What an introduction! Thank you. I didn't. When you put it like that, it's quite a list.
Yeah, it is. I want to hear about this marathon. But you know, Ross, a lot of people come to this studio during the focus groups we hold. They stop me on the streets and they always say, Brian, one day I'm gonna be a guest on London Real. And you know what I say? I say, make it happen. Make it so where I can't ignore you anymore. Make it so where I have to have you on because I have to hear your story. And I was just thinking about that today because I want to hear your story. And I love a lot of things about you, and I know we're going to have some fascinating discussions about nutrition, fitness, health, steroids, everything. But you promote yourself really well, you know? And I actually asked one of my staff, I'm like, is he American? Because, and I'm American too, but I mean, like, you promote yourself almost like an American, as in, look, you've got great photos, you've got articles, you're doing cool things for charity. And I think that's missing a lot of times. And when people go to build brands, and we have a business accelerator course, and half the course is about building PR, getting people to notice you, getting people to want to know your story. And yet you do that really well. So I was wondering, how did you become the guy who is a great promoter of himself? Did that take time, or was it always natural to you?
That's a great. That's the first time I've been asked that. Really, it's also very nice compliment in there. Good question. I think once you have something that you want to promote and what you want to stand for, which for me was always just pushing the boundaries of physical excellence, just challenging stuff that we always take for granted. The marathon being a great example. people saying, you know, strength and stamina exists at two ends of the fitness spectrum. You know, Hickson's theory on molecular biology that, you know, you have to be so specific, tell your body to adapt to strength or stamina, but the two rarely merge. And that's why I wanted to do the marathon, just to go, okay, let's rip up the rule book on that. And I think when you have something like that, everything else falls into place. So the nice pictures, the social media. I mean, I'm so lucky, so many people listening to, you know, my musings and my scribblings, and then was lucky enough with GQ as well. They kind of realized, well, hang on, you know, this guy is saying some stuff that's not quite conventional. You know, he backs it up with science. You know, let's give him a voice. Let's give him his own platform. And it just kind of snowballed from there, if I'm honest. And with everybody that's so supportive, it just snowballs. Yeah.
When did you start writing, and when did you realize that that was an important part of getting your message out there? Because not everyone can write good copy.
Yeah. I think the thing was, it was, you know, when I was actually, you know, coaching and training people, it was always one-on-one, and I loved doing that, but I was always going to be limited in how many people I could actually influence and broadcast to. So as soon as I started writing, all of a sudden those teachings went out into the world, and they just took upon a life of their own. And then, you know, you just get emails. There was the, you know, losing 24 pounds in 24 hours. Initially, I did that because I was working with a few MMA fighters and powerlifters, and there was a lot of dangerous weight cutting practices. So I turned around to them and said, look, you know, your weight cutting looks like a concentration camp. You know, you're locking yourself in a sauna in a sweatsuit on a bike. You know, whereas it should be more like a spa weekend. You know, you should be enjoying yourself, sit in a nice Epsom salt bath, you know, reduce your carb intake, reduce your muscle glycogen, but make sure that you're loading up on MCTs, you know, we've already discussed that. It should be pleasant, because even if you then lose the weight, you're then going to get into the, you know, the cage, or you're going to get onto the lifting platform. Your immune system's going to wonder what went on. Your endocrine system's going to be like, what just happened? Neurotransmitters going crazy. So that's why I initially lost 24 pounds in 24 hours in that stunt. Then writing the whole thing up, midway through, I realized, well, hang on, I think there's something here that you can explain to a wider audience as well, that fat loss is very different to weight loss. You know, so fat loss is adipose tissue, whereas weight loss is just your new sort of, you know, weight in general is a numerical reflection of your relationship with gravity. That's all it is. And so after that whole stunt took a life of its own, it was originally for MMA and powerlifting and weight-based sports, and then it just went into the mainstream consciousness, and I was on Australian breakfast TV kind of explaining all of what just happened.
It's fascinating. I mean, it's so important, I think, for personal trainers or anyone in the fitness business to realize that in order to scale, you have to go to a mass media, because you could be the greatest trainer in the world, but you only have your 10 hours a day. And it's, and so many trainers get into that, they're making pretty good money, and they're done. And I met so many of them, it's just like, you gotta scale your message, and they don't. So I think that's great, you embrace that. The weight cutting thing's fascinating, and people that don't know, MMA fighters have to make a certain weight 24 hours before they fight. Conor McGregor used to make 145 pounds before he moved up to 55 to challenge the belt, and then he moved it up to 170 for the hell of it. We'll talk about that later. And power lifters, I'm guessing they make weight probably the same day or the day of the lift.
Will vary, yeah, depending on.
But like, you know, one of my guests that I've had on, Mike Dolce, I'm a big fan of Dolce. Dolce was one of the first guys that did weight cutting the easy way, like you said. And so many athletes, again, it's like a meme that gets mutated, and people think, oh, weight cut, I put a sweatsuit on and I basically pass out in the sauna. Whereas Mike would say, know what, we're gonna hang out in the hot tub, we're gonna reduce calorie intake, we're gonna do it the easy way. And I still think the MMA community is struggling to find a right place. Now they've banned intravenous rehydration, which makes it an even harder game. So that was, but it's, you're right, there's so many great real world applications of that, because you can lose, most people would think it's crazy you can lose 24 pounds in 24 hours, and you can, but that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with fat loss.
That's 100%, you're so right. So yeah, that's initially why that was, and even putting it back on, I mean, people were like, oh, you lost 24 pounds in 24 hours. Yes, I did, but you know, in every single article, I was very quick to point out, 1, this is not a diet, 2, I don't recommend it, and 3, I put it all back on in the space of honestly an hour. It was that quick. You know, that's how adaptive, you know, this physiological puppetry, I called it, that's how sort of delicate and easily it is manipulated.
An hour, you put on 24 pounds.
Oh, it was a good hour. Yeah.
Water and a meal with some carbs.
Yeah, lots of water, electrolytes, replenish, do it all intelligently. And that's another thing I think you see even in the UFC. There's a few fighters, not mentioning the names, but you always see them and they're there saying, oh, look, this is what I'm going to put my weight back on with. And you're looking and it's just chocolate, Mars bars, sweet sugar. And I'm like, yeah, but again, it's so much more intricate than that. So granted, you've got your carbs, you've got your simple sugars there, yes, but where are the phytochemicals, nutrients, enzymes, all those things that your immune system, your body as a whole has just kind of gone, whoa, what just happened during that weight cut? And then you're going to try and give me sugar and go get in the cage and fight.
Yeah, a lot of fighters, what they do is they'll cut weight up until that Friday night. They'll do weigh-ins, and then a lot of them go out for the party meal. They'll eat pizza, ice cream, sugar, all that stuff because they've been cutting weight for weeks in their training camp.
Yeah.
And then they fight the next day.
Yeah.
It's insane. And then all the smart fighters are like, no, you have that meal Saturday night after the fight if you really need it. But the night before, you should be eating similar things to what you have. Maybe you add the carbs in or add some more stuff. But
so true.
But it's amazing how even at the leading edge of a probably billion-dollar industry now, people are still doing it the wrong way, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I always say, the laws of biology, these universal laws of biology, are never linear. So we can't necessarily mathematically control them. We'd like to, and many people, I think there's a lot of nutritionists and personal trainers and strength and conditioning coaches who have this kind of messiah complex, and they like to sit there and say, I know how the body works, you need to do this, you need to do that. But no, there's this huge biological ambiguity, and at best we can only ever sort of manipulate and positively influence those universal laws of biology. And so yeah, you're so right. If you're leading up to a fight and you've lost all that weight and then you just go and do something that you haven't done for 6 months in all of the training camp, and you go and attack the donuts, the pizza, your body isn't going to respond well to it. But yeah, okay, intelligently saying, right, almost saying, thank you, body, for getting me through that weight cut. Here's the nutrients, enzymes, various things that you need to repair and regrow and get us ready for tomorrow. And then you're so right. After that, yes, then have your party meal. But to do it before, that's nutritional suicide.
Right, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
All right, I want to get into your fitness philosophy, but I still want to finish this thread out and find out, when it comes to promoting yourself, you're writing now for GQ. You got great pictures on Twitter you post of yourself. I mean, they're really well thought out. They're not your usual selfie in the gym. They're active. You put a lot of thought into that, I know.
Yeah.
And I want to get your thoughts on other people, because a lot of people are trying to build personal brands these days. We do it here too.
Yeah.
And I want to get your thoughts on that. And then finally, these stunts. I mean, these for charity and else.
Yeah.
I mean, you thought about this.
Yeah. So going back to sort of marketing yourself, I think. You're so right. I think what you put out there needs to represent what you do. Like, there's the huge selfie culture right now, and there is a value to it. There's lots of people doing very well from that selfie culture. It exists. If you want to embrace it, that's absolutely fine. But I think there's such a thing as kind of aesthetics, so just looking good, and then you've got functional aesthetics. You've got your gymnasts, you've got various people who do stuff with it. Going back to some of your guests, Ido Portal looks fantastic, but he's functional. James Haskell, mountain of a man, functional. Elliot Hulse, equally. So all these guys, yeah, they look good, but it's a complete byproduct of this functional aesthetics. And I think,
but you look good. You're highly aesthetic.
Oh, you. Yeah, I think too many people maybe make excuses and they'll draw that line. There was a great question actually. It's going to bug me now. I've forgotten his name, but he posted on Instagram when we announced that we were going to do this chat, and he said, "How do you feel about the fitness community becoming too far down the route of aesthetics?" Amazing question. I'm going to apologize now. I forgot his name. I think it might be Dave. So yeah, the fitness industry becoming too far down that aesthetics and a little bit shallow, for want of a better term, to put it brutally. But people seem to forget that even bodybuilding, so Eugene Sandow, the father of bodybuilding, he was an amazing athlete. He single arm snatches, stuff that he could do as part of his routine. There was real showcases of strength. And then the posing was almost after. People would say, show us your biceps. So he would then, go into certain poses. But he was an amazing strongman, a celebrated European strongman. And people forget that. The father of bodybuilding, so the father of aesthetics, was first and foremost a strongman, and it was this kind of secondary byproduct of it that he looked the way he did.
Okay, so both are important to you.
Yeah, I think if you're an athlete and you're competing, then so many UFC fighters, for instance, will have unbelievable VO2 lactic thresholds. But to look at them, I never forget going back to boxing. I mean, Chris Eubank looks amazing, but then equally you'd look at someone like Joe Calzaghe, who didn't necessarily have an aesthetic physique, but was unbelievable. What he could do in the ring was amazing. So if you're an athlete, just train for functionality. You've a job to do. Whereas with me, I'm not an athlete, in the strict sense. I'm more a bit of a circus act, with my charities and stuff like that. And I acknowledge that. I have so much respect for professional athletes. I'm not one of them. So I realize that I go into this other circle, which is athlete, writer, marketeer in a way. Yeah. And so over here, aesthetics is unavoidably quite important, because
and it gets people's attention. The well sculpted, the light with the shadow picture on the Instagram, it gets people's attention. I mean, it's your way in to get the message. So I don't fault you for making those the absolute best. And you put time in on those.
Yeah.
And it's more than just the selfie in the gym. And and that's a conscious decision you make.
I think so, yeah. But then equally, I will always say on my social media, some of the best guys out there, people who I will sit opposite them, wide-eyed, open-mouthed. Steve Ingham, head of physiology at English Institute of Sport. When he talks, I'm just like, wow, what he talks about is amazing. Yet sometimes I sit there and he's got, a few thousand on his Twitter, and I'm like, people would be so much better off following him than a lot of the other athletes, not mentioning any names, but a lot of these fitness models who have got millions of followers, and yet they'll talk about, sets of 21 on biceps, things like that.
There's a fine line between the two. And one thing I love about Ido is that by saying things that he feels and that are controversial, and he'll go after vegans, and he doesn't give a shit. And he'll say things, and that's in the past that's done him well. And he even admitted to me the one-arm handstand got a lot of people in the door, and he even said he hates one-arm handstands.
Great point.
And so you have to have both. And I asked him that in our moving conversation. We were walking through London talking. I said, what's the balance between being this monk on the mountaintop practicing that no one knows about versus the 1 million followers on Instagram, fitness model that has nothing to say? But there is a fine line, because if a tree falls in the woods and no one hears it, I used to say it did fall, but it doesn't fall. So you're aware of that. Okay, now let's talk about this charity stunt, because a lot of guys would be like you. I got the great looking pictures on Instagram. I'm writing for GQ. I got my fitness supplement company, the charity stunt, and I think you got another one coming up.
I do.
Do you just wake up in the middle of the night and say, I'm going to do this? And that was no joke. I mean, it took you 19 hours. It was in the rain. I think people don't realize how hard that was. And can you tell me how you came up with it and how the execution went?
Yeah. So it was sitting there wanting to do something, great for charity. It was the Teenage Cancer Trust was the main charity. Good friend of mine years ago now was diagnosed with leukemia, recovered. He's absolutely fine now. But as a result, a lot of the work that Teenage Cancer Trust did for him was amazing, and we've never forgot it. So I always wanted to do something for them, and we were sitting down throwing around ideas, and we just sort of said, running a marathon, that's kind of cool. And everyone was like, but I feel the bar needs to be raised. And then I can't remember who it was now. Somebody said, why don't you do it pulling a car? And I was like, okay. Now we're on to something. And it escalated, from there. Minnie heard of it and they said, look, we'll wrap a car. Silverstone were amazing. They were like, do you want to, do it running around Silverstone? I was like, yeah, sure.
Those are big buy-ins. I mean, Minnie's a big company. Silverstone's it's the heart of racing here in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, Silverstone there was a moment, 6 o'clock in the morning, rain pouring down. At Silverstone, there's no coverage. So if it rains and there's wind, it just comes horizontally at your face. But there was just, pitch black, seeing Silverstone just lit up, and then throughout the whole stunt, Silverstone just lit up and revealed itself to you as the sun rose. We did those 19 hours and then it set. It was emotional. It was something I'll never forget. It was amazing. But yeah, it was really kind of, if we're going to make an impact and do something for charity, it needs to be big. It needs to be huge. You can't just do a marathon. Let's make it bigger. And I think off the success of that, there's been a lot of people who have since rung me up and said, hey, look, we've got an event. Will you do something crazy? And after a few bulletproof coffees, my mind works overtime. So I was just throwing ideas around, and it's almost become now people have given me a license to do crazy stuff, which is dangerous because I'm just booked up now for the year.
Was there ever a point on that day where you thought, I'm going to pack it in? This is not going to happen. This is taking too long.
No, I mean, the Silverstone actually came out and the head of PR turned up, and it was raining. I was cramping up. It was, I was slipping at certain points. So the car wasn't actually moving as much as I wanted to. My legs were just coming from underneath me. But never, my support team was amazing, and never once did I want to give up. So when Silverstone said, are you okay? I was like, yeah, but how long can I have the track for? And they were like, oh, till Monday. I was like, okay, quickly did the maths. That's 56 hours. Okay, well, I'll be here 56 hours if that's what it takes. And they just laughed and was like, all right, see you in a bit. And they checked on me, throughout the day. And
how long did you think it was going to take?
My dad worked it out. He was saying he'd be surprised if I did it under 24 hours. So he was one of the first people I rung afterwards. And I was like, Dad, 19 hours, boom.
What did you think? Same thing, maybe?
Yeah, it was completely uncharted territory. I mean, I was so lucky because Jeff Capes, 2-time world's strongest man, I rung Jeff up when I said that I was doing the stunt. I think he still may hold the record for the truck pull.
Yeah, I remember that.
He's a specimen, and what he doesn't know about strongman isn't worth knowing. And he was brilliant. He sat me down and just said, Ross, systematically, let's break this down. He said, whatever you're going to do a mile in training. Once you've done a mile, double that time. Don't push yourself in that mile and then work off that. And
a mile of pulling a car.
Yeah, that was when I very first came up with the idea. So we did that, and then I was able to actually sit down and plan the logistics. I mean, it was looking about 24 hours.
And when you did that first mile, how long did it take you to double that time?
So he was saying double it in terms of what you predict you'll do.
Okay.
So if you're able to do, a mile, say you walk 3 miles per hour, which is a good walking pace. He said, double that, so halve that, and that's 1.5 miles per hour.
Okay.
And he wasn't wrong. He was pretty spot on.
What happens when you cramp up? Like, I've had muscles cramp and they just don't work no matter what you want. I mean, that really is the muscle deciding, not you.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
I was lucky on the day. I had literally everything taken care of. So going back to what we were saying with, in terms of sports nutrition, not too long ago, they used to say carbohydrates are your body's primary fuel source. It was widely agreed. And to go and try and do a marathon or anything like that on anything other than carbohydrates was suicide. It's like,
I would think so. I would say carb up the night before.
Absolutely, yeah. And then what's happened now recently, and not even recently, but kind of uncovered, there was the shortcut expedition. I think I've pronounced that right. There's a famous expedition off the Antarctic, and one of the explorers who went loaded up, and he had bread, and he had rice, and he had pasta, and a lot of the natives were just laughing, and they were like, what is this guy doing? That is going to last him 2 days before it freezes and perishes. Sure enough, it did. And then what happened is they taught him to go and hunt for bear meat, for seal meat, various things like that, fats, these rich fat sources. And what's amazing is I was lucky enough to read his diary. This was long before ketosis and all of our sort of nutritional science knowledge now. He literally describes ketosis down to a T long before it was labeled. And he's there saying in sort of ye old English, as he's like, the bear meat hath a strange smell. It's quite potent. It stings the nostrils. And he's reading stuff. He goes, but after about 4 days, it doesn't sting the nostrils as much. And he just starts detailing how his body starts to adapt. And I don't think, often we are quite, sort of generally humans are quite arrogant. We like to think we know how things work. And it's like carbohydrates are the body's primary fuel source. Yet 100 years ago, this guy was explaining how his body went into ketosis, and the Inuits knew it, and sure enough, he completed the expedition. Now we have...
For people that don't know, ketosis is when your body is really primarily burning just the fats to survive.
That's right, yeah. And then equally now you have, and if I get this wrong, don't directly quote me on this. There's a guy, Timothy Olsen, I love this story. He, ultramarathon runner. And he ran an ultramarathon, was stopped in the last 5 miles from stomach cramps. I believe he then had a test, found out he was gluten intolerant, so decided to not only cut out gluten, but carbohydrates. He ran that same event the following year, won it, and set a race record completely on fats. But what I love about Timothy is he says, I'm not on a paleo diet, I'm not on ketosis, I'm just on a high-fat diet. He almost refuses to label it. you know, and adhere to that. And famous writer, one of my favorite writers, Nassim Taleb, one of my favorite quotes of his, as humans facing limited knowledge always resort to prescribed ideas and narratives. And I think we're always trying to put things into pigeonholes. Okay, he's a high carb, he's carb loading. Oh, but over here he's on a paleo diet. And he's ketosis over here. But it's like, no, you know, why try and label everything? So going back to my marathon, I was taking a dual fuel source. So yes, I'd carb load like right up until the day before, but I can hold what, 500 grams of muscle glycogen at most. Once that's run out, which will be pretty quick when you're pulling a car, 1.4 ton car, your body's gonna sit there and go, well, what else have you got? Luckily, because I've been training my body to use fat stores, MCTs, which we were talking about, and that's another thing. People go, oh, get lots of fats down you, and it's like, well, yeah, but fats is this incredibly broad, let's bring that down. So it's like, okay, MCTs. And then people go, oh, medium chain triglycerides. Oh, coconut oil, that's high in medium chain triglycerides. It's like, yeah, but let's even get more specific than that. So then you've got linoleic acid, capric acid, caprylic acid. So coconut oil, for instance, great source of MCTs, but quite high in linoleic acid. So when you start to look more specific, MCT powder in this pure source, you start to get capric and caprylic acid, and these are the sorts of MTCs over here that are actually converted to ATP stores as adenosine triphosphate more efficiently in many ways than sugar. And that's what you need over here. So yeah, carbohydrate primary fuel source, fats, but then looking more specifically, what fats are you having? When you start to understand the intricacies of that, energy source wasn't an issue during the marathon. I finished and still had energy, that wasn't an issue. It was cramp, which we...
Okay. Were you consuming those MCTs during the day, or you were just training yourself up until that for weeks and weeks before?
Yeah, both. And then on the day we had a dual energy source as well. So we were going for like simple carbs, MCTs, electrolytes, various things like that.
Simple carbs is sugar.
Yeah. Okay. And it was like, okay, but plotting that all along the way, energy wasn't an issue.
What was the hardest point in the day?
About 5 o'clock in the morning, when the rain was just coming at your face like that, and I was just slipping. I could not get any grip whatsoever. So we had to just regroup. I looked at my support team and they were just like, I think he's broken. I was like, I just can't get any grip at all. So we went back, changed the footwear, went back out, and then managed that hill at Silverstone. I can tell you.
So there is a hill, even though it's a racetrack, there's hills.
That's it.
Okay.
If I went to Silverstone now, I would be like, Brian, see, that's pretty flat, right? And I think we'd agree. As soon as you have a car on your back, I can tell you it's not flat.
All right, and what was the feedback from the media when they heard about this? It's funny, I mean, like, and I deal with people all the time that have done incredible things, but like, if someone says, what's Ross all about? I'm like, well, he did that. Even someone here was like, he did what today? So it's an anchor. Was it bigger than you thought it would be as far as the effect?
It was, but what was interesting is leading up to the event, I was talking to all of my media contacts and I was telling them, I even went out on social media and was like, hey, look, this is what I'm doing. World's strongest marathon, gonna run a marathon, pulling a car. And I think lots of people, I think the media ignored me for sort of quite broadly. They were just kind of like, oh, he's probably gonna give it a good go. And then afterwards be like, I tried, guys. So no one really believed I was doing it. And then right afterwards, all of the media was like, you did what? And I was like, no, but I told you I was going to do it. And they were like, yeah, we didn't believe you. So then it was quite nice. And what I love with social media is you don't even have to rely. I mean, that's what you guys do so well at Unreal. You take, that power of broadcast, into your own hands.
Right. And you did that as well. You documented it with film, or did you have a news team there? Or?
No, well, a news team as in my friends on GoPro.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, and that was what was so nice. We ended up, hashtag World's Strongest Marathon trended for 18 hours worldwide. And that was what was quite nice, that regardless of the media, it was like, we're going to do this. We're going to make a difference, whether the media...
Powerful. That's the lesson for anyone listening today,
yeah.
Is that take it in your own hands. Don't wait for the media to cover you. Cover yourself.
Yes, it's exactly that. Yeah.
Okay. And so there's more of this coming for you. What's next? I mean, obviously now you're being known as the guy that does crazy things. And it is empowering. Like when you get to be known as the guy that does X, you kind of want to do 10X then.
Yeah.
So did part of you think, okay, now I'm going to get back to writing and get back to the serious stuff? Or were you thinking I'm going to do something crazy?
Yeah, it was that evening. I went home, was with my mum, my dad, my brother, and we all sat down and I was like, I need another stunt. And they were just like, please just rest. I was like, no, I need to do another one.
What's next?
23rd of April, it's the toughest, which is Sweden's biggest obstacle race. They're coming to the UK for their first UK event. And Adam and Per, the owners, throwing around ideas. They heard about the Mini, and they were like, "Look, will you do an event? You know, do a stunt, another stunt at our event." I was like, "Okay." So we start throwing around ideas. Again, it was almost said sort of whimsical, as a bit of a joke. And I was like, "Hey, look, why don't I climb a 20-meter rope for 24 hours, up and down repeatedly, until I've climbed the height of Everest?" And everyone went, "That's a great idea." So that's what we're training for right now. Which I did. You know, I managed 6 hours the other day, but my hands gave up on me. They were blistering. Yeah. They're fine now, but you see the calluses there.
So you're climbing up and down a rope, 20 meter?
Yeah, we think we're going to do it 20 meters, but I might.
It's pretty high.
Yeah.
Like you'll hurt yourself.
Yeah, I know. We've been looking at that, but it needs to, again, going back to the marketing, I think if it was like a 5-meter rope, the media in attendance might just be like, you know, so it needs to be a bit more.
And it would be the height of Everest in the end?
Yeah, yeah.
If you get how many hours is that?
Yeah, so we worked it out, something like 10 meters on the minute, every minute for 24 hours. So when you start breaking it down like that, you know, we're going to have...
It's impossible to do.
This is what's quite nice. This is what I love when people say about the world's strongest marathon. People are like, "No, that's not possible." And then I'm like, "Well, we'll find out." And then it's the same. I love throwing around ideas because people like yourself who are educated start going, "Well, hang on, what's going to give up? You know, lactic threshold, VO2, are you going to be breathing that heavy? Maybe it's just your tendon strength. Surely your grip's going to go. What about clothing? Are you going to burn a hole in like your gloves?" And all of these things start going. And I'm like, let's find out. Let's 23rd of April, let's find out.
There must be something wrong with you when you get to, I mean, this is all fun to talk about, and you're like having a great time thinking about this, and you can act like a lackadaisical guy, but 30 minutes into that challenge, you must be thinking, "Oh my gosh, now I got to finish this," and then some real grit has to come out.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. But what's interesting is over an event like that for 24 hours, like the world's strongest marathon, sometimes it's just keeping sane, and my support team were amazing. Like, it's not, pulling a car for a marathon is not an individual event. You know, they were amazing. We had like Marvin Gaye playing on like the car, blaring out tunes. People were walking past at Silverstone. We had tourists just taking pictures like, "What is going on?" as one of my friends was hanging out the window. And it was just all fun. So it's the same with the world's longest rope climb. That's what we're going to call it. We've got a tent, loads of my friends are coming, we're going to have a barbecue, we're going to have music, and it's going to be a real sort of like spectacle. So we start at 9 o'clock on the Friday, which is the 22nd, and then we'll finish 9 o'clock 23rd, the Saturday. So then everybody who comes, about 10,000 people in attendance, will sort of
see you doing that.
Yeah, we'll sort of see the finish.
I love this.
Yeah.
Okay, and now I have to ask you a personal question. Now, when you're up there after 14 hours doing this, something drives you to finish this. What makes you feel the need to like finish that race, do you think? Do you want people to know that you're the real deal? Are you proving this to yourself? Like, what is that?
That's a good question. I think it's probably a mix. I think Wim Hof, massive fan of his, and he similarly had this belief, you know, and he was turning around to people and saying, "Oh, okay, you know, your immune system, we can't control it, right?" And everyone was like, "No, you can't control it." And he's like, "Well, I think I can." And everyone, you know, by his own admission, people were laughing at him at first. So then he started going, "Well, okay, fine, I will bathe in ice cold baths for hours to prove to you, you know, that what I'm saying, I can do various things." To the point with his immune system where he said, "Fine, inject me with a bacteria, I will cure myself," and did. And I think it's the same, that I think there's a lot of self-proclaimed experts out there. And if you're going to turn around and say, "Oh, no, okay, I'm going to challenge strength and stamina, you know, I'm going to challenge certain widely held beliefs in fitness," then you just got to put yourself out there and trial it. So I think there's partly that.
Is that you want to prove other people wrong, or just say, "Hey, we need to find out, and I'm going to be the one that's going to mix these two," because this is another strength and stamina mixture, isn't it?
Yeah. And then we've got something later in the year which I will, we could touch upon, but it's just always finding something where you can sit down and just say, "Okay, this has challenged what we thought was possible." That's what drives me, that you can sit there and say, wow, okay, we didn't think that was possible. All the books and all the sports science that we've read, so going back to Robert Hicks and molecular biology and concurrent training, which is kind of, if you're training, it needs to be strength, it needs to be stamina, it needs to be agility, it needs to be speed. Don't really combine all of them because it becomes ineffective. Well, I was the first to go, okay, well, I'm going to pull a marathon and, you know, with a car, and maybe challenge those beliefs. So yeah, it is that just pushing the boundaries in your chosen field, I think. Yeah.
Okay, what's coming at the end of the year? I'm trying to guess. I'm like, okay, what is the ultimate in stamina event? It's probably that 100-mile race that my guest Joe DeSena did here. He did like 3 ultra marathons in 3 days. No, he did like 7 in 7 days or something stupid.
Yeah.
That with like carrying like triplet babies with cancer on your back.
Yes. This one, I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I used to be a swimmer many moons ago.
You play water polo for Team GB.
That's right, yeah. Okay. But well, swimmer initially, but I'm built like a hobbit, you know. So everyone was like Michael Phelps' size.
And you need to be tall for those long arms. Yeah. In water polo.
Yeah. Well, and so then I went into water polo. I quite liked the sort of physical aspect. You know, with swimming, if someone beats you, you got to shake their hand and say you beat me. In water polo, if you're losing, you can get a bit physical.
You can bust them up a little.
Yeah, and I liked that. So again, we sat there all exchanging ideas, and one idea was, I was lucky enough to go out to the Bahamas not too long ago. I was shark diving, so learning how to wrestle sharks, various things like that. So I got in contact with an old friend of mine. He's a shark wrestler, shark diver, who's now a free diver. So I was like, okay, just gonna put it out there. World's strongest free dive. Dive 100 feet with 50 kg on your back, hit the bottom of the seabed, squat 10 times, and then come to the surface. Again, they were like, that's not possible. I was like, well, let's find out. Let's do 10 feet, let's do 20 feet, and let's just find out. So later in the year, we booked our flights off to the Bahamas, and gonna try that one.
The world's strongest freediver. Okay, I love it. Freediving is fascinating. It scares me. It's interesting to see. A lot of people don't understand certain things about it. I find it fascinating. When you get to a certain depth, you actually sink, don't you?
Yeah.
So you don't actually need weights at a certain depth. There's a lot going on there. It's really a battle with your brain, I think, more than anything.
100%, yeah.
And it's very dangerous as well. Some people have died.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's coming soon. Shark wrestlers, I mean, I don't know if I should even go there, but this is who you roll with. These are people that dive with sharks and then want to touch them as well?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So a good friend of mine, Jeremiah Sullivan, invented the metal mesh suit that you see with a lot of the shark divers will use. So it was essentially his job to create a metal mesh suit, try it on and go, yeah, it feels pretty good. I'm now going to go down and see if a shark attacks me and if the suit will withstand it. And that was essentially his job.
And did it?
Yeah, no, thankfully, yeah, he's still, you know, I mean, he's incredible. To this day, he's still inventing various things on suits and then just going down and wrestling with a shark just to see if it works.
Does the shark not rip your arm out of its socket anyways?
That's what's interesting. I mean, you know, sharks are like 90% muscle. So if a shark clamps down on your arm, you know, a lot of people will kind of go, ooh, that's of course your reaction. You'll go, get off me, the shark's on my arm. But as soon as you actually move away, now the shark's not going to bite through the metal mesh suit. In fact, it might just be coming over to just see what you're up to. You know, it doesn't have any hands, so it can't even touch you. So it's just kind of nipping you just to see what's going on. And if you panic and flail like that, then the shark's just going to clamp down and go, oh, okay, hang on, it's prey. Yeah. Exactly. But as soon as you flail your arm and it's away there from the actual joint, it won't bite through the metal mesh suit, but it will clamp down and twist. And that's when your arm just twists out of its socket and irreparable damage. So that's what actually does the damage. So if a shark, as I discovered in the Bahamas, bites down on you, it's kind of like this water jiu-jitsu. You pull the shark in like that, keep everything tight. And if it goes for a roll, then you go for a roll with it. And you're in its house. So you just have to accept that you are going for a roll. You go for a roll, and then eventually the shark's like, okay, it tastes of metal. I don't even like what it is, and it will leave you alone. And hopefully you come out the other end.
Did you have this happen to you?
Well, no, this was all explained. Okay. Thankfully,
if it does, you roll with it.
We saw Jeremiah do it.
Okay.
But yeah, thankfully, I'm yet to experience that.
That's fascinating. That makes a lot of sense, though. I dove with the sharks in South Africa near Cape Town. We went to that place where it's like the highest concentration of great whites. Where there's an island where the seals live. And so we went out there, and it was this like old South African guy that spoke Afrikaans, and he was just like with like 4 teeth, and he was just looking at me. And we were going out on the boat to get out to where all the sharks are, and it was like a couple miles out. And I said, and I'm American, so where safety is king. And I was like, do we have any life vests? And he was like, mate, he's like, if you fall off this boat, you're gonna be dead because the sharks are gonna rip you apart. And it doesn't matter if you float or not, you're fucked. And I was just like, okay, so no life vest? He's like, no life vest. I was like, okay. I was just like, Jesus Christ. So anyways, there's a cage, and they suspend the cage in the water, and you get in the cage, and the sharks come by, right? And meanwhile, he's got a fish head that he's swinging around on a rope because they're trying to get the sharks coming by. And the ones in South Africa, those are the ones that do the vertical breaches. So they'll come up from underneath, they'll actually grab the prey, fly out of the water and into the air. They don't do that in the States. You know, they're more calm. And so these sharks coming by were the scariest motherfucking things you ever see in their life, because they move so slowly and so big. When you're in the water in this little tiny cage, you're just like, why am I here? But yeah, much respect to those sharks and to anyone who shark dives. To watch the rest of this fascinating interview, click on the link below and go to londonreelacademy.com. There you can sign in with your social media, log in and watch the rest of the episode for free, along with all of our episodes on London Reel, my webinars, and all of our premium content, all located over at londonreelacademy.com. So click on the link below, you'll be directed there, and you can watch the rest of this fascinating interview, and I'll see you there. You have much respect for guys like Ido and what they're doing, and Elliot, what they're doing, and you know what Dorian did in the past, and all these pieces. But like, if you have to sum